Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Lauren Marie and this is a Google Hangout for Right Recovery for You, our very first online book club. And I'd like yes, welcome everyone around the world. And we have here the brilliant and amazing founder of Right Recovery, Marilyn Bradford, who is a psychotherapist and access consciousness facilitator and the author of Right Recovery for You, which is our book for today. Hello, Marilyn.
Hello, Lauren.
I'm so excited about this hangout and that we are getting the book out there globally in a way that's different, even though the book, how long has this book been out, Marilyn?
February a year ago, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought, just over a year. And this is our kind of a launch into a different way of getting it out there in the world, and we're so happy for you all to be joining us. And today we're going to be talking about chapter 1, which is the myths and lies about addiction. And Marilyn, I think it's interesting that just recently I've been noticing in the media a lot of articles coming out about, you know, this or that we used to think was true about addiction has now been disproven, or these old held beliefs that we've had or research has supported are now being questioned and disproven. And do you have any awareness about what's going on there? Is this new research? Is it something different? Is something changing? Or is it just that we're finally starting to see what's actually true coming out?
Well, I think it's a little bit of everything. I think the world is getting more global and more willing to explore and less willing to take something that's been in place for years and years and years as true and real just because it's been in place for years and years and years. And most of what created the current traditional belief system around addiction and recovery was done in the 30s. Ooh. So, you know, they have the doctor's opinion in the 30s. I don't think I'd want to ask a doctor, you know, if he was still using medical stuff from the 30s. So yeah. I have the sense that people are going, hey, wait a minute. And I think, too, more people are willing to speak up and say, you know what? That old way didn't work for me. And I'm told that I'm wrong and bad, but it just doesn't work for me. I've had a really different experience. So people are willing to start exploring that. There's just so much more of an open willingness to look at things that before were very sacred and sacrosanct and all of that. So that's my sense of what's going on. And I find it incredibly exciting that lots of people are taking a really different look at what addiction actually is and isn't, and what can change it.
Yeah, it's like one of those areas I was looking at last night while rereading this chapter, that how outdated the information seems to be. And you outline in this chapter several myths and lies that I think are really popular, widespread beliefs, like that you actually, once an addict, you are an addict, and this is not only a label that you're given, but something you have to hold on to as an identity, and you can't actually change. And you identify that as a myth or a lie. So what would you say about to people who are considering themselves an addict of one sort or another?
Well, one of the things well, first of all, I'd like to talk a little bit about addiction in general, just a wee bit, because people think of it as alcohol, drugs, maybe gambling, sex, that sort of thing. But the way I've come to see addiction is that it's the default place where people go to escape or not exist for a little while because they found life too difficult, too painful, overwhelmed. They didn't get the toolbox. There's that great sense of the primary addiction of wrongness. So why do I want to bring that up in the beginning? Because it actually goes to exactly what you're talking about. And it's helpful to remember that people create belief systems and then they make them truths based on their experience. So if one person is bitten by a big dog, they might go, okay, everyone needs to watch out. Big dogs bite. And if you're around a big dog, it's going to bite you. And I know because I've had that experience, and they'll carry that fear forward which dogs can read, and they'll probably recreate it. And that's how a lot of these things actually get started. So it's not that people are necessarily consciously telling lies or trying to, put out information that isn't correct. They just really don't know any better and don't have the accurate information. So the once the addict, always the addict, which came about a lot in the beginning of the 12-step work in the 30s, or the alcoholic, it came out of their experience because they didn't have the tools or the information to know that they could overcome this. Their experience kept proving that they couldn't go back out there and change anything. That the only thing that they could do was to stop entirely and work this program which manages symptoms. And I'd have no way to make AA wrong. It's the correct thing for some people. It's just not for everybody, right? Recovery for You is not for everybody. And if you really look at the history, you can see how these things got started. It's the natural outcome of experiences. When we take experiences and we draw conclusions and we solidify them into truths, and then we pass those truths down to other people, and that great access tool, that your point of view creates your reality, then of course people act out. Well, see, I proved it. That was my experience. So what I found with the Right Recovery for You tools is that anyone can overcome an addiction and can be addiction-free, essentially. Now, there's a caveat here because, okay, let's see. Traditionally, people are looking for answers and structures. Mm-hmm. They want to know what to do and what is. So when I say that to people, they think that that's my answer and that that's true. How can I say this? That's true in a way that everybody does the same thing, the way in 12-step everybody does the same thing. So why am I saying that? There actually are, we'll just take alcohol because that's what a lot of people are interested in. There actually are people whose bodies are allergic to alcohol. It's not that they're addicted, their bodies are allergic to alcohol. The addicted part, the go-to part, can be changed permanently. The allergy probably can't. So, but people are allergic to peanuts. They just don't eat peanuts. They don't go, I'm a peanutaholic. Live their life doing all this other stuff. So and this is, I think, a far less number of people than, oh gosh, there's been this culture in America. If you have a drink every day, you're an alcoholic. It's just nuts. But I think that's a far smaller group of people who actually have a real allergy to alcohol and who can, it's best if they don't drink. You don't eat peanuts if you have an allergic to peanuts, or if you're allergic to peanuts. And the addictive part, that kind of compulsivity, that desire to escape, all of that can be easily worked through and overcome. So that's the part I'm talking about when we're talking about you can end any addictive or compulsive behavior. You can end addiction by using tools that are actually empowering you to come out of this sense that you have to escape or avoid or get away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you just brought up so many different things. I'm like,
I know, that's the thing.
Yeah, so it's like, I think that the analogy you made with the dog and the, once it bites you, then you can go to that conclusion or that fear place of like, big dogs always will bite me. It's like there's so much of that, both the fear with addiction,
Yes.
And the tendency to want to be black and white with it. Okay, I can't drink at all. What are you telling me? If I do drink, then I'm afraid I will fall off some wagon or become an alcoholic or go back to some sort of destructive behavior or something like that. So how would you start with someone who has who has some of those points of view based on their past, where they do have an experience with a behavior being very destructive and not going to a place of fear with it?
Well, for a lot of people, particularly people who've been in traditional treatment or who have a lot of fear, I ask everybody, what is your target? What would you really like to do? And what would work for you now? And we begin to explore the options. And for many people in that situation, stopping completely for a while is the best thing to do. And what I mean by best, I mean the most expansive. It's going to create the most for them. Because there has to be a space where we can work with the tools and I can teach people and empower them. Now, some people, even if they've been drinking a lot, will say, you know what, I don't want to stop drinking. I'm like, fine, we can work with that too. So it depends so much on the individual, but I'm definitely not against choosing not to drink or choosing not to, whatever it is for you, gamble or something like that. And you have to be aware. I mean, there's so many ways that people act out in what's called addictive ways, like with food, with eating, where you can't really say don't eat, so there are so there are tools that you can use with anyone to begin to get them to be aware of what's going on. And just things like, talking about, when did you first realize you didn't fit in? And let's look at the wrongness of you. Going through a lot of that beginning stuff with the whole wrongness stuff, and getting people to see that they're not wrong, that being different, it can bring a huge amount of relief. And getting people to see that whatever their addictive behavior is, it's been a coping skill that's worked well for them up until now. It just may be that they're ready for some coping skills that actually enhance their life more than the addictive behavior.
And that's one of the myths and lies you talk about, Marilyn, that I think is most controversial. That is, that addiction is actually not a disease. That you have some choice here, and that success doesn't necessarily mean stopping a behavior. So, can you talk a little bit about the difference between addiction as an identity or a disease and addictive behavior?
Okay. A couple of things there. One is addiction as an identity. Let's just take care of that one right off the books. Because I always tell people, please, please, please don't say, hi, I'm Marilyn, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an overeater, I'm a this, I'm a that. Because once you've identified yourself with that, you have to act it out. It's just like saying, hi, I'm Marilyn, I'm a woman. Oh, I have to be a woman. You know what I mean? It doesn't give people any choice. So I always tell people to say something like, I'm currently drinking more than I would like to drink, but I'm making choices and I'm changing that. Or I'm currently smoking 3 packs a day still, but you know what? I'm coming to a place of empowerment and I know it's going to change. So if you can say that, rather than making it an identity, you can go a long ways to creating changes.
What's the difference there, Marilyn? Sorry, what's the difference there when you separate it out like you just did? What does that change?
It makes it something outside of yourself that's not you. It's just a behavior. You wouldn't say, hi, I'm Marilyn, I'm a leaf raker, or I'm Marilyn. Something like that, because if you make it part of you, you can't change it so much. If you put it out there as a behavior, then you can go, oh, that's just one of many behaviors I do, and I can change a behavior. I can change being a couch potato to walking every day. I can change overspending to, creating something that works for me financially. So it's really difficult to change something that you've made a part of yourself, that you've identified as part of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so how did it, I'm just looking at how did it, and maybe this doesn't matter, but get started where it became an identity? Where did that idea come from, that you were?
Well, that came from the 30s, and it came from the idea that if you didn't identify yourself as that you would, I don't know, I suppose just be a slave to it all the time. I'm not really sure why they put that in place, but it doesn't contribute to people's creating a greater life.
Yeah, so the idea being that if you identify yourself as having this problem, but it being an identity that you have, that somehow you could
That you are the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's even true. Well, like there's a big difference between saying, I don't drink because I have an allergy to alcohol, and I'm an alcoholic. I mean, one is very charged and you're wrong and it's an identity, and the other is I have an allergy to it. I'm discovering that I'm fairly gluten intolerant. I mean, I don't, so, it's just like, no, I'm sorry, I don't eat bread. I'm not doing a lot of gluten these days. It should be that simple, that easy. Now we're looking at alcohol a lot. This changes when you get to things like gambling and overspending and all of that, because you're not imbibing it. But with those, the same thing. It's like, okay, currently I've been gambling and I've been engaging in a behavior that's not a contribution in my life, and I'm changing that.
There was a question that was just sent in about giving power over to various addictive behaviors. Is that a piece of this, Marilyn, where you would give power to a behavior?
That's definitely a piece of it. And that's actually the basis of traditional treatment. They take the whole idea that you're powerless. Say you're powerless over alcohol, you're powerless over cigarettes, you're powerless over cocaine, whatever it is. You're powerless over ice cream. What you've done is you've made it bigger than you. And then what traditional treatment does is then you shift that. So you're in the less than position. You're in the one down position. You shift that to a higher power. So you're still in the one down position. You're still powerless. You still can't do anything yourself, but your higher power will take care of it for you. Now, what I do with Right Recovery, which of course Access, is all about empowering people to know that they can change anything. And when you begin to see, like for instance, suppose you have to go to a PTA meeting or a board meeting, or you're going to see someone you don't really want to see. And you go, oh, I really don't want to go there. Oh my gosh. So you think, well, if I just have a toke of a joint, maybe that'll help. So you do that. And then the next time it comes around and you have to go to this board meeting or the PTA or whatever it is, you go, the anxiety comes up and you've already connected it to curing that by the joint. So then you have a joint, and then we actually create these addictions by then giving the power to manage whatever it is, our anxiety, our fear, our socials, whatever, to a substance or an activity. So that every time the anxiety comes up, now you automatically go to running for 8 miles, or going into trauma drama, or cleaning the house ferociously. It becomes your go-to, but you've actually created it. And that also goes to it not being a disease. It's a series of choices that leave you in a place of seemingly no choice, but you can choose. You may not be able to choose at that particular moment to stop cold turkey, although you may, but you can choose other things. Okay, what else can I look at? What can I get here? What have I been unwilling to be aware of? How have I made having a joint a requirement for going to a board meeting? That's nuts. So does that make sense, kind of?
Yeah, so, and I'm just wondering, so you have in the chapter some tools and tips on how to kind of break those compulsive or addictive behaviors and some other things to start trying. And I'm just curious, in your experience, Marilyn, is this something people are willing to do? Are they willing to take that extra time and look at, oh, I've connected smoking a joint with going to a board meeting. Is that really working for me? Is that something people are willing to look at?
Well, some people are and some people aren't, and it's really a choice. Also, when I work with people, I do start working with them on the whole wrongness thing. So because if you can take the judgment out of it, you can begin to clear things more quickly. It's pretty amazing. Someone said to me the other day, oh, she used to have this difficulty sort of with anger and reacting, and she hadn't done it in a long time, but she got into a situation where she did, and she said, the cool thing was I reacted to this person, but I didn't judge it, and it lost all of its charge, and it just kind of went away. And that's what we can begin to create when we get out of judgment. I mean, judgment really holds addiction in place, you know. So
what is that connection there that with judgment and the addictive behaviors?
Well, I talk in the book, I think it's chapter 3, which I think we're going to do next time, I think, ending the primary addiction. What I discovered is addiction starts very early on. It starts when we're usually pre-verbal, and there's something about us that we know is different. And different in this reality is judged as wrong. Do not be different. Be like everybody else. Be normal. You can get along. And I think many of us knew from very early age that we were different. The other thing is, a lot of times, many people who end up with addictive behaviors are people who were not acknowledged as children. You know, instead of, they were assumed, oh, you're just this little thing, and we're going to input all this stuff in you, and you grow up to be one of us. So when we're not acknowledged for being who we are, and when we know we're different, we're going to begin this process of judging ourselves as being bad and wrong and an alien and a weirdo and not fitting in. And who wants to be that? Nobody. It actually threatens survival for a young child to be that different. So this creates the beginning of this primary addiction to judgment and the wrongness of self. And it is incredibly painful. And it is held in place with judgment. It's everything has to be judged. Did I do well? Did I not do well? Did I do it right? Did I not do it right? Am I pleasing mom enough that I'm going to get fed? You know, there isn't that great sense of expansiveness that we see in very few children, like Gary's grandson, Xander, who, you know, he doesn't judge. He's just right there because he's been raised to be with an acknowledgement of him and who he is, and he's not made wrong for things. But a lot of what happens, and this I think explains so much relapse, and also going back to the first thing of your experience will then create your truth kind of thing. If you have that sense of wrongness and you don't have a way to deal with it, then you're going to relapse if you, like, say, stop drinking or stop doing whatever it is you're doing, because it's just too painful to sit in. And you know that I don't know the way out. I don't know how to deal with this. My marriage is falling apart. I don't know what to do. I think I'll just, you know, have another cigarette, open another bottle of wine. So and that judgment holds it in place, really.
And you say in the book, Marilyn, that to the readers, you know, for them to acknowledge that what they know about addiction and that they actually have a different understanding or knowing about their addiction than maybe what they've been told. And I'm curious, in your experience working with hundreds and thousands of people all over the world, does that seem to be the case where they actually get that it isn't these things that we're taught, the myths and lies?
If you can get them to back away from believing the experts, and sometimes what I have to do is just, you know, do like I do this when I'm doing Are You Eating Your Liver, Living to Eat? I ask people to destroy and uncreate everything they've ever heard, ever bought as real and true about diets, about exercise, about their bodies, about how to lose weight, about what works and what doesn't work. Right, wrong, good, bad, POC, POD, only, choice, boys, meons. And that clears the way for people to become more in touch with their bodies and get that every body is different and that what works for one person is not going to work for another person. It's really about getting to know yourself rather than getting sort of placing this expert structure, one size fits all, on top of you, and then mostly wondering why you're failing. Because one size never fits all. You ever tried on those garments, one size fits all?
It doesn't.
You know, I like the
Well, it's interesting too in the newer research that's coming out. It seems to kind of back up what you're saying, where we used to think if you gave, a rat a drug that they would choose the drug. And it's like when you take the rat out of the crappy environment and put them in a happy environment, they actually don't choose the drug. And it's, they're starting to look at that with, human people and not just and finding the same results. I don't even think that I've ever shared this with you, Marilyn, but I used to work with inner city Baltimore drug abusers in prisons with using acupuncture. Yes, treating them with acupuncture to, for their quote drug addiction. And I was thinking about this last night, how actually I would say they really do get that it was a choice they made that got them, both to use the drug or sell the drug and to get caught and put into jail. And that most of them are actually in there by choice. And that is actually a better place for them than being on the streets.
Yes.
So I was just looking at that. Yeah.
I had a client once who purposely got a DWI so that she could get free treatment, because treatment was so expensive. But when you're convicted of a DWI, you can have free treatment. Right. So she did that on purpose. But what you're saying makes so much sense. For so many people, the pull to addiction is that they just don't see any other options. It's the same thing a lot that leads kids, young people to suicide. They just don't see anywhere to go. No one's given them the tools or the possibilities. So they go, I might as well use drugs or drink or do something like this. I'm stuck. It comes often from a sense of I'm stuck. I'm wrong, I'm bad, and I'm stuck, and there are no options for me. And I remember I was interviewing this quite amazing young man. I think he was 16 or 17 at the time. And he did a lot of pot, and he was sort of head of his group of friends, and he was actually looking out for them. I mean, he was making sure that no one got any bad stuff or anything like that. But I was asking him, and he knew I didn't have a judgment about it. I was asking him about the pot use. He says, look, this is what we see, my friends and I see. We're told one thing, that life is wonderful and good. We go home, we see our parents sitting outside in the back having 3 martinis, not liking each other. We go to school, we have all these ideas that we want to do this and we want to do that, and our teachers tell us, you can't do that. You have to deal with what's here. This is the way it is, deal with it. It was like, wow. And he says, that's the energy we just don't see. Now he has an amazing mom and he was changing things, but we just can't see, these kids can't see any way out, Marilyn. They don't have anything else to go to. And that's a lot of why they're doing pot and other drugs. And that was just confirmation of everything that I'd seen before too, but in a really strong way,
So when you actually can give them choice and tools and other ways of handling these things, you see them make a different choice, and that
Absolutely.
actually, yeah. And I think that maybe is the golden light at the end of the tunnel. Is like, there is another possibility in that if you do have, which these tools from Access Consciousness and from Right Recovery for You, and the work that you're doing, Marilyn, to empower people to actually have these practical, pragmatic tools like that when they are in the moment and they don't see another way, that they actually can start to change that place where they feel like they don't have another choice.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it takes individual work or group work. It's helpful to see what other people are doing and choosing. And, a lot of times you can just use them. Once you learn to use them, have a little experience with using them, then it's easy, as you know, with Access,
Yeah, and I think it's great to tell people that it can be easy, because there's such a point of view that it's hard and long and arduous and terrible for the rest of your life, and who wants to do that?
Exactly. And it can be really much easier than people ever dreamed, and much faster. And it's about changing beyond, so that clients end up saying things like, wow, I don't even want a cigarette, or I haven't even thought about drinking in weeks. And it's a surprise to them. And I remember, this is also interesting. I go to this sort of wild and wacky health practitioner he's actually a chiropractor, but he's the one, I was having some health stuff, who really said, Marilyn, you really need to stay away from gluten. You have basically an allergy to that. But we got to talking about, what I did and what he did. And he had this smoking cessation program. And he actually destroyed the allergy to smoking that they all had, and destroyed the craving. He said then everybody got mad at him because they didn't have the other tools to create their life. They're like, I don't even want a cigarette, and I want a cigarette, because what am I going to do when I'm so stressed? So it was like, wow. It just showed how much this was about a coping skill to deal with not having good coping skills, and accurate information about what you can be and do to create a life you desire. But that was pretty interesting discussion we had.
Yes. We've got a few questions coming in. Would you like to address those?
Absolutely. Sure.
So someone would like to know, what does it take to change the need of it? Which I'm guessing is the need of the addictive behavior, whatever that is.
I'm not sure. Maybe they mean the craving or the, well, two things. First thing is asking that question, what's right about my addiction I'm not getting? Because a lot of times, and I know I've talked about this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again, we think that the addiction is a bad, terrible, horrible thing, but it actually serves some purpose in your life. And this is where we can misidentify and misapply that we need the substance or the behavior, when what would really be helpful is to change, find other ways to satisfy what the addiction is taking care of. So if it's the only way you find comfort, or the only way you don't remember some of the abuse that went on, or if it's the way that you get to be by yourself, or you get to be with other people, or it's the only way you can manage the insanity of your kids, or whatever it is, begin to look at what it contributes to your life. Because there's this crazy idea of isolating it as it's just the alcohol, or it's just the spending, or it's making a huge contribution. It is filling some needs in your life, and that's what you want to look at. What are those needs? To have skills to better deal with my kids, maybe to get some extra help, to work on lowering my barriers, vulnerability, clearing the issues of abuse, those kinds of things. So that's what I would say, is ask yourself what the addictive behavior takes care of for you, and then begin looking at it that way. And then the other, and this is part of the same thing sort of, but one of the questions I always have people ask is, if I wasn't deciding that I needed that, whatever it is, drink or ice cream, what would I be aware of that I've not been willing to be aware of, or that I'm afraid to be aware of because I don't think I'll be able to handle it? So that's really helpful too. I mean, it's just a cover up for other things. And once you can begin to take a look at that, you can begin to change things.
Yeah, great. So what would it take to step out of all the judgments, myths, and lies I have bought my entire life? Here's another question for you.
Well, one of the things that Access says to do is to destroy and uncreate your relationship with everyone and everything every day and every night. And so what I do in the morning and in the evening is say I was having an issue with alcohol, I'd say I destroy and uncreate all of my projections, expectations, rejections, separation, judgments, conclusions I have about alcohol, about drinking alcohol, about it's bad, it's good, everything holding that place. I revoke, recant, rescind, reclaim, announce, destroy, and uncreate it times a godzillion. Right, wrong, good, bad, puck, puddle, and shorts, boys, and beyonds. You know, you do that in relationships so that you're relating to the person in front of you. You're not actually relating to the baggage you all have brought from the past 7 years or whatever it is. So I think that's really a great thing to do. Destroy and uncreate all your projections, expectations, rejections, separation, judgments, conclusions, and everything you bought from anyone else about whatever it is. The other thing to ask, of course, is who does this belong to? Because a lot of times part of what we've bought is actually belongs to other people. And you can just sort of go, you know what? Return to sender with consciousness attached. Everything I bought about talking pot, everything I bought about alcohol and drinking or overeating or smoking or whatever it is, talking about everything I bought about that's as mine, and talking about everything I bought based on it since then, and return to sender with consciousness a billion times, a godzillion, right, wrong, good, bad, pot, puddle, short, sports, beyonds. Also practice being present. If you're actually present, you can't be searching the past, and you cannot actually be in addictive behavior. Addictive behavior is based on judgments from the past or about the past. Does that make sense? Yeah.
You just did some really powerful, amazing stuff, super, super fast. So I just want to tell people, if they found this video on YouTube and they're not actually signed up for the book club, to go to your website, rightrecoveryforyou.com. And once you do that, we'll actually send out from today the clearing statement and what you just went through, which was a couple more in-depth clearings on kind of undoing these places where you've made oaths or vows or that sort of thing, and we'll send out what Marilyn just went through, which I'm sure is
probably, yeah, because someone's really confusing. Yeah. I do get that.
Yeah, and the clearing statement, we'll send that out. And also, Marilyn, you mentioned who does this belong to, which might be a new concept for people. So we can send more information about that out as well.
Right. Yeah. We're all far more psychic than we think we are. We pick up lots of other people's thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I had someone today, I was doing a Skype in with another country, and there was someone, because I'm going there was someone who'd actually taken the essence of alcohol out of her mother, who drank a great deal. And now, even though her mother's passed on, she'll find that she'll take the essence, like if she passes a group who's drinking, she'll take the alcohol out of them. And I know that one of Gary's daughters would take pot out of people. She didn't like pot. She didn't smoke pot. But she can, so our bodies can do all kinds of crazy things. And, same with taking thoughts, feelings, and emotions out from other people. We are not the separate little units we think we are.
Which is a huge concept. I think we could even just do a whole hangout based on that one concept, to ask that question when you have a craving or an impulse to go gamble or shop or whatever that is, to even just ask, who does this belong to? It takes care of so much of it, I've noticed.
I know it really does. It's amazing. It really, yeah. And if somebody wants to embark on a rather strenuous but just phenomenal little task, is to do who does this belong to for every thought, feeling, and emotion you have for 3 days. That comes from Access. And you'll fail, quote, the first day, or rather, you can't fail, but you'll try it and you'll forget, and you'll try it and you'll forget, and then you'll do it more and you'll do it more, and it's amazing the space you come to when you keep doing that, and just the awareness of how little any of it is yours.
Which might relate to this question that just got sent in, which is how to step out of an addict's reality and stop it from stopping me.
Well, stepping out of that is stepping out of judgment, for one thing. Stepping out of, and that's a judgment of any behavior you've had or other people's behavior or what you're doing or what you're not doing. I like that stepping out, because I often talk about you just step to the side. You don't fight with it, because fighting really does nothing but tie you to something. But you just sort of step over here. And a lot of that comes from empowering you to be you and to acknowledge the greatness of you and the gift that you are. So many people have this idea that who they are, and this is part of the wrongness, is so unacceptable that if they stepped into being them, it would just be something horrible, or they'd kill people, or the world would explode, or so. None of that is true at all. Stepping into a different reality than the addict's reality is stepping into the greatness of you, is stepping into the awareness that you can choose and make changes. And you may go back and forth for a while. A lot of people do. But if you can step out of judgment, giving yourself a judgment-free day, and I think we'll talk more about that with what's right about your addiction and the ending the primary addiction. But so you can actually do it. You pretty much have to let go of your whole belief system that you've created. And part of that is just recognizing that it is just a belief system. All judgment is arbitrary. All belief systems are arbitrary. There's nothing actually real about them except that you make them so. So if you can go to a space of, you know what, this isn't even real. I mean, I think that can go a long way.
And even if the addict, quote unquote, in your life is making it real, that you don't have to.
No, you absolutely don't have to make it real. Wow, that's amazing creation this person has created. What an interesting reality. I don't think I'll choose it. I think I'll choose something different. But I mean, we were talking the other day, Lauren, about how all these pregnant women, the thing that they want is the drugs with the, just like.
Which to me is insane, but to them is totally normal, that you would just, sit through the boring stuff about how to work with your body and breathe and all that stuff, and just tell me when I get to have the drugs.
Right, exactly. And that's their reality. Their belief system is so different from what you're aware of and your connection to your body and all of that. And that can make a huge difference. And that's exactly the kind of thing, those awarenesses when we were young that most of us judged as wrong. Wait a minute, this is insane. But these adults and everybody's insisting it's correct. So I guess I'm wrong. And it's back to that willingness to truly begin to trust yourself, to know what you know, even if it doesn't sit with everybody else. And to have your own reality. I was talking with Gary the other day, and I said something. I was having a little bit of an issue with allowance on one of the calls. And he said, Marilyn, that's their trauma drama is their reality. And you would think I would know this, but I said, I assume that other people have my reality, and they don't at all, and nobody. I mean, what most of us do is we abdicate our reality and what we know to be true for somebody else's reality. And you can do that with the reality of the addict. You can buy that as true and real, as nothing to do with what you could create as your own reality and who you truly be. So.
And also seems like it would stick them more than free them up when you buy into that reality that they're creating.
Yeah, absolutely, because then you're all there agreeing about this insane reality that doesn't actually have to be there, but everybody's agreeing to it.
Yeah, right. So even though
fitting in with the norm again kind of thing.
So even if they're in a place where they feel powerless, or they've thought that they have an addiction or whatever, when you step out of that and don't buy that as real, that can actually start to free them up too.
Absolutely.
So Adriana would like to know, how does one stop being addicted to having debt?
Well, okay. And every target of addiction has a little bit that you can work with. What I found with that is, the question is, what do you love about having debt? Now, I don't always do that one, but that one seems to work with debt. Because a lot of that comes from, it's almost like a way to handicap yourself. so that you can't really feel free to create. Sometimes you can ask a question like, what are you punishing yourself for? Because it creates a lot of anxiety for people. So I would, and ask questions. Do you love money or do you actually hate money? And where did your ideas of money come from? Are you playing out a family thing with money, that everybody was always in debt, or that they had to spend and save and you couldn't have anything, and you're almost in a resistance and reacting, so that you're going to, well, I'm not going to be like that. I'm just going to buy what I want. And if I have a lot of debt, oh, well, you know. So asking a lot of questions about what it contributes to your life. Does it underscore that you're a failure? Does it underscore that you don't deserve? Oh, you know, all those kinds of things. You have to ask a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is a huge topic that I know you've covered in a series of calls on clearing the commitments to poverty. You've gone over some of the debt stuff there. And also with Simone Millicis, you did a whole radio show on Times with
and that's on Times Radio. You can go on Simone's archive page and listen to that call.
So that might be something else we can send out to these guys too, since there's more than we probably can say at the end of this hangout. Yeah, so anything else you want to say about this chapter, Marilyn, before we kind of wrap up?
Well, what I'd really like to say to people is keep coming back to, what do I know to be true? If I weren't buying the so-called experts, if I weren't, you know, if I lived in the Middle Ages and everybody was saying the earth was flat, would I buy it? Why? What would I know to be true? And it's the same thing here. If you're buying something, you know, assuming something's a truth without checking with yourself, you really put yourself in a dangerous position. Biggest danger, losing you completely. So I would just say to people, look at everything that's said and ask, is this actually true? What do I know about this? Is this true for me? And that's what I found. A lot of the people who sort of seek me out or come to Right Recovery, or, you know, I just couldn't believe that I was a powerless dweeb. It's just, I'm not a powerless dweeb. Or I couldn't buy that I had to do this for the rest of my life. There's already this inkling of, I know a different something for myself. And that's what I would love to start people with, is just this sense of knowing what you know to be true, not based on experience. Most of what we based on experience and we conclude from experience is actually false. And that's kind of a big statement, but there you go, because it is.
There you go. And this is just the start of a discussion, really, Marilyn. And I know you're offering a full telecall series, which will go much more into depth, where people can actually ask their personal questions, and you'll be able to work with them sort of one-on-one, but in a group. In these telecalls, and that starts on July 2nd, called Addiction Over Easy.
Yeah, and that's a series I've done before and was very successful. I mean, people were like, wow, I had no idea I didn't have to struggle and suffer so much, that you know, what I'd been told. So it's, and I, you know, I always have fun. We always have fun on these, and yet a lot gets done. It's not about pain and it's about, wow, let's see what we can let go of today. Let's see what's actually going on here. Wow, that's awesome. And stuff clears, and people begin to see how many choices and options they actually do have, and how to empower themselves so that it is easy. It's not something that they have to struggle with the rest of their lives. And I'm really looking forward to that series. So yeah. Addiction Over Easy starts July 2nd.
Starts July 2nd, and what would that be worth to you, to have all addiction just be over like that, easy?
It makes life so much more fun.
It does. But they wouldn't want things to be too fun and easy, would they, Marilyn?
No, probably not. I don't think so.
So we'll send some information about that out too, and you can also go to rightrecoveryforyou.com to sign up for any of these things, as well as this book club hangout. This is the first one of 3 that you're doing, Marilyn, and the next one will be in 2 weeks. And
yeah.
Chapter 3, which we'll send out to everyone who's signed up to this Hangout list, and so you guys can read that and send in your questions and be ready for Chapter 3 next time.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you, Marilyn. I'm so glad
Thank you, Lauren. This was great, and you make it all possible with all your questions and technology and everything. So I really appreciate you hosting this.
And thanks everyone for watching and participating, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds great. Yes, and trust you. Know what you know.
Awesome.